I never said that you believe in the Trinity because of the popes. Please cite a source. Okay, now we're backpedaling fast, aren't we? Let's try this again. All right, you want to be more specific? James White believes in the highly developed Christology that he speaks of, not because of sola scriptura, but because of the papacy and the Catholic Church. You want to be that specific? You only want to make it high Christology rather than the Trinity? Okay, we can do that too. Will you defend what you said, or will you not? Everybody knows you said it. It's right there on your website. Are you going to defend it or not? I've got people saying, I would definitely like to see that debate. So how about it? Okay, I have a final question for Dr. White. There are 4 apostolic churches today that claim their succession back to Christ. They are the Catholic Church, the Eastern Orthodox Church, the Oriental Orthodox Church, and the Assyrian Church of the East. All these churches believe in the priesthood. Dr. White, you've claimed in the past that several of your church fathers taught sola scriptura. Yes, I have. You normally mention St. Athanasius of Alexandria, St. Augustine of Hippo, St. Cyril of Jerusalem, and St. Gregory of Nyssa. If that's true. By the way, how many of them believed what you believe as a Roman Catholic is necessary to believe? In other words, all the same de fide dogmas. Immaculate Conception, bodily assumption, fallibility of the Pope. How many of them? None. If that's true, why didn't they denounce the priesthood like you do? Let me rephrase the question. Why didn't these priests denounce the priesthood like you do? Okay, time out. Couple things. First of all, the concept of priesthood at this point in time, while unbiblical, certainly had not developed to the level that it exists today within the Roman Catholic Church. As always with Roman Catholic apologists, you read history anachronistically. You put these lenses on because Rome tells you what you're supposed to see in history. Then you look backwards and read into people. Their view of it, unbiblical. Their view of it, not nearly as unbiblical as yours. Because, for example, they do not have the concept of a sacramental priesthood that works the miracle of transubstantiation, a term that does not develop for another, 500 years after their time period, give or take a couple centuries? And because they didn't have the Aristotelian categories of accidents and precedents that required for the whole concept that comes along later on in history. There is no anti-priesthood movement within the church in the first millennium of the church. There are anti-Trinitarian movements, anti-Chalcedonian movements, anti-grace movements, and many other esoteric heretical movements, but none of them saw fit to develop an anti-priesthood movement. The priesthood developed in every region of the Christian world, whether it be Rome, Gaul, Hippo, Alexandria, Constantinople, Armenia, or Syria. Notice he says developed. Wasn't delivered by the apostles, but developed. I should also point out this development happened very early, and not a single soul protested its development. How early do you think it was? All these people read the same scriptures that James White does. They all read the book of Hebrews. Really, they did? You sure about that? I read a source that says many of them didn't. And in fact, that was where the primary development took place. Anyways. In fact, all of these Christian areas had monastic movements where cloistered monks would dedicate their whole life to the study of Scripture, or their traditions of Scripture. There is no repudiation of the priesthood. Why was there no anti-priesthood movement until the Reformation? That is the question Dr. White needs to answer. Very, very simple. Well, very, very simple. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. Let me look here. Well, Turretin fan, I like Turretin fan's statement. He forgot to mention the fifth church that claims apostolic succession, namely the Mormons. The last thing I got was, I never said that you believe in the Trinity because of the popes. Please cite a source. And I then cited your statement, high Christology, because of the popes, which is, of course, what the Trinity is. Yeah, White believes in the highly developed Christology he speaks of, not because of sola scriptura, but because of the papacy and the Catholic Church. So far, I'm not hearing anything back from Alan Rule as to whether he'll defend that. Remember, who was it? Oh, Guardian. Remember Guardian? Was going to call it. How long do we give Guardian? Like 6 months? That was what, about 6 years ago? I think now, something like that, with all the errors and stuff like that. It hasn't been seen or heard from. Yeah, we could get a reputation. Yeah, that's right. Exactly right. We better be careful about this. All right. Why was there no anti-priesthood movement? Something tells me that if I mention the people that rejected the priesthood, your response is going to be, well, they weren't Christians anyways. they were heretics, which sort of ends up begging the question, doesn't it? Because it does seem very obvious to me that there were numerous groups that when they rejected Roman pretensions, one of the common elements of the charges of that, Inquisition, against them was anti-clericalism. Specifically, a rejection of the idea of the clergy-laity split and the idea of a sacramental priesthood. Seems to be. But once again, it seems that what you're arguing is, well, if something becomes a general tradition during the Dark Ages, then that must mean that it was true, because they were all studying the scriptures as closely as you, right? No, they weren't. Literacy plummeted, even amongst the clergy. And, they're all reading the book of Hebrews. Really? Could you show me, Mr. Rule? Because I'm sure you read these commonly. In-depth, original language-based, meaningful interpretation, not using allegorical interpretation, commentaries on the book of Hebrews from what we would call the medieval period. Now, there is all sorts of writing based upon scholasticism and the concept of citing those who came before us. But we all know how stultifying that was. Your argument is that the same level of meaningful exegesis based upon the original languages was taking place at that time period, and therefore were the novel ones. You've admitted that this is not apostolic. But what you would need to find to make a charge of double standards stick would be meaningful exegesis of the text during this time period, specifically dealing with this issue, especially dealing with the book of Hebrews. You say they're reading the same book. How do you know? Give us some evidence. I'd like to see it. Because when people did leave Rome, this was part of one of the reasons they left Rome, and then you just simply dismiss them as heretics at that point. So, what is inconsistent in my saying that the medieval period was a very dark period where tradition trumped scriptural teaching? Who was saying that there needed to be, ad fontes to the... Oh, that was Reformation. Yeah, what?